let's begin with the Chicago Blackhawks, who were the second worst team in the NHL last season. The story of their offseason is, I would say, obviously the second overall pick, Artem Levchinov, who we'll talk about in a little bit, but adding Tyler Bertuzzi to the right wing of Connor Bedard, potentially getting Taylor Hall back healthy, naming Nick Foligno captain. Very exciting. What do you make of the Chicago Blackhawks?
They are an NHL team this year, which is the nicest thing that we would have been able to say about them last year, because they weren't. They were an AHL team last year. We can all agree they were horrible. I famously went to like a dozen Blackhawks games last year, and a bunch of them, Connor Bedard wasn't in the lineup. And when Connor Bedard wasn't in the lineup, it was the most depressing atmosphere I've ever been to in an NHL arena. It was awful. So at least they have a respectable group. Do I think that they're going to be good? Probably not. But their forward group is at least intriguing. Like, they have NHL names there, and there are a number of young guys that are going to be interesting in addition to Connor Bedard. Like, I'm interested to see how much we see and how much proactivity we get out of Frank Nazar, who I really, really like. You mentioned Taylor Hall, who's not young, but like, we haven't really seen him with Connor Bedard for an extended period of time. You've also you've got some other young guys, like Alex Vlasic started to look really good at points last year. Philip Kurashev. You don't know what you're really getting from Lucas Reichel, but it's going to be a big year to find out that. So, like, there's a lot of intrigue here, and I think that they are going to be a respectable NHL quality caliber team.
Okay, so much of the Blackhawks conversation is the young guys who are coming, but let's start with who's here. And obviously the biggest name on this team is Connor Bedard, who enters his second season. He had 22 goals last year, 61 points in 69 games. We know he had the injury. He had to wear the mask. It was very exciting. He told Nick Foligno that he was slow. Nick Foligno was very pissed off at him. But year two of Connor Bedard, I think, can be very exciting, just given that if they so choose, they can give him 30 goal scorers on each of his wings. He can have Taylor Hall on his left, Tyler Bertuzzi on his right, both guys who have scored 30 goals in the NHL. I think that Bedard, it can be maybe what we were talking about last year if he didn't get hurt, which is one of the very best young players in the NHL.
Can he be a 100-point player in his second year?
If Hall is healthy and Bertuzzi is comfortable and locked in. I love Tyler Bertuzzi, but I've said really every year of his career, I would love Tyler Bertuzzi on my team, and I would not love to sign Tyler Bertuzzi because it's going to be tough to give that guy a contract that won't age poorly, but he's kind of gotten slotted into contracts that make sense for him now. I think he can take a very big leap forward. That's the way that I put it. That's not very exciting, but I think that he could take a very big leap forward. You mentioned the young players. Alex Vlasic starts a 6-year deal. Still 23 years old. He'll probably play on the first pair with Seth Jones. Amazing. Artem Levchinov is hurt right now. Don't think we're going to see him. I think that he'll probably be in the AHL. We'll see him at some point, maybe later on in the year, but he was, I think, the third youngest player in college hockey last year. 18 years old still. You don't need to rush him at all. I was reminded by our friend Jay Zawoski of CHGO, because I've been dipping into their podcasts of late, just as a viewer. This isn't an ad, but check them out. All City. This is an ad. Whatever. We're all in the same network. Kevin Korchinski was in the NHL last year because he had to be.
Yeah.
They can play him in the AHL this year. So if they so choose, and Kevin Korchinski, I want to say, played 76 games last year. He played a ton, and he had good moments. He had bad moments. He had young defensemen playing in the NHL moments. It's a reason why when we were talking about Lane Hudson in the Canadiens preview, I was like, he can play in the AHL, so maybe we don't need to see too much of him. Since then, I think he's shown so well in rookie stuff that we'll probably see a lot of him. Yes. But in the case of Kevin Korchinski, they don't have to play him in the NHL if they don't want to. So we'll see how much he does. Wyatt Kaiser, also, same situation.
Yeah, but that's also like assuming that the guys that they signed are going to hold up. Like, you're talking about Alec Martinez and TJ Brody, who are on the older side, and Alec Martinez has dealt with quite a bit of injury stuff. Like, there could be a point, month, 2 months into the season, where they do have to play Korchinski and do have to play some of those younger guys. Hey, thanks for watching the channel.
We appreciate everybody who checks out our stuff, but 80% of our viewers are not actually subscribed to this page, so if you could smash that subscribe button, it would go a very long way for us.
The more subscriptions we have, the more visibility we get from YouTube, which allows us to do more.
So press that button. Thank you.
It's also weird to go backwards on that stuff. Like, you already gave Korchinski a year of NHL stuff. Are you going to, like, quote unquote, redshirt him in his second year? I feel like you kind of just let that progress go, but I do get what you're saying, and I kind of view NHL defensemen, young NHL defensemen, like I view NFL quarterbacks, where it's like, if you can protect them and let them develop in a slower fashion, unless they're like the elite of the elite and it makes no sense not to play them, protect them as much as you can.
Yeah, and I think that the young players understand the business side of it as well, that if you get thrown into that situation where it's like you either have to play in the WHL or the NHL, there's no AHL, you're going pro, you're going to get thrown to the wolves a little bit, but they'll also try to shelter you as much as possible, that the next year, if they're like, hey, go down, play in the AHL, get your bona fides really up, I think they understand, like, it's not like I was in the NHL 1,000% on merit. It was more just about the CHL, NHL agreement rules. But they're still in the position, though, where they're still trying to make kind of steady improvement. So it's not like if they dink around and protect a young defenseman too much that they're costing anybody. They still should be prioritizing the steady improvement overall of these young players. And it's why you probably won't see Lev Shinov a ton early, why you probably won't see Frank Nazar a ton right out of the gate. A guy who really intrigues me, and this is not a young player, I think he's still like late 20s maybe, he's 29 years old, is Ilya Mikheyev, who they acquired. Really interesting case where he was a burgeoning good goal scorer a few years ago with the Maple Leafs. I want to say he had 21 goals and then became a free agent, got a too big contract from the Canucks that they very quickly regretted. They moved off that contract. They sent it to the Blackhawks. I think the Blackhawks, yeah, they took a second round pick in that deal for the Canucks to just move his cap space. I think it's a smart pickup for them because it's not like they're going for a Stanley Cup right now. They can figure out, can this guy be an okay third line player for us? And if we play him a lot and if he scores a bunch of goals, maybe this can be one of those things where we take a pick to get the player and then eventually can flip him and get something back for him. Ilya Mikheyev is the guy I got my eye on.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those cases where it only makes sense for certain teams, and the Blackhawks are definitely one of those teams where it's really like a no-risk flyer for them. Another ad that I really, really like for the Blackhawks is a familiar name, Teravainen. Like, he's a really nice piece for the top six to help just kind of help those guys put it together and make their jobs a little bit easier. Like, he's a really good player, and I know that, like, the Blackhawks fans are very excited to have him back. So I really do like what they've managed to do in the course of one summer.
Yeah, this is a team that I think is building since cratering the right way. And they do still have some good pieces from when they cratered. We've discussed the Seth Jones contract a lot, but he's still a top four defenseman that is seasoned, can log a bunch of minutes. Those guys don't grow on trees. So they still have some okay pieces, but not many from when they really hit rock bottom and got that first overall pick. The Nick Foligno ad has been so much about vibes. They make him captain, which you and I both absolutely love. We were screaming about that all year last year, just waiting for it. So super happy for him and just really happy for the Blackhawks that they seem to be doing this thing right. Connor Bedard doesn't get an A. The A's end up going to Seth Jones and Connor Murphy, which this is just about structure right now. I would have liked an A on Bedard, but I like that they're like, we are not giving this kid too much too soon. Just let it all happen in time.
Yeah, I agree. I like it. I also like, for a team that we were all screaming about basically all season long last year, we're like, they got to go out and they got to get a Stamkos, or they got to go out and get Nylander. They didn't get any of those, like, quote unquote big fish, unless you count Tyler Bertuzzi as that, which I don't. A really good offseason for not landing one of the big splashes.
Yeah, and it doesn't put them in a position where they're screwing up. We talked about trading for Marner. It doesn't put him in a position where they've overextended themselves. They've got, in my little cheat sheet here, I write down either the Stanley Cup odds or the cap space if it's interesting and relevant to this discussion. The Blackhawks have so much cap space probably that I didn't even write down how much cap space they have. They haven't handicapped themselves or handcuffed themselves in that way. So they're not doing anything to get in the way of this rebuild because it very, very clearly is a rebuild. They were 32nd in goals last year, 29th in goals against, 28th in power play, 27th in penalty kill. Which of those two things do you think, or which of those four things do you think get better, if any of them?
29th in goals, 100%.
What's that?
You said 29th in goals?
They wish. They're 32nd in goals.
Okay.
They scored the least.
They will not finish last in goals scored this year. Like, I don't think, I'm not going to say by far, but they are going to make a significant jump.
If they make that their first line, if they make Hall, Bedard, and Bertuzzi their first line, and those guys stay healthy, that in and of itself is enough to score you a lot of goals.
And like they also improved their back end, which is going to prevent the puck from being in their own end like 90% of games.
Laurent Brossoit, watch out. Maybe he does a little something for their goaltending situation.
Maybe.
He was supposed to at some point in some places, but
I have no idea what to make of their goaltending situation. Peter Mrazek, Laurent Brossoit, like both guys that have been around a long time, but have been up and down, like very serviceable, but not guys that you probably want to like lean on. Mrazek was great for them last year in really difficult circumstances. I just don't know how much I trust that continuing into this year.
I still like the Blackhawks. I'm still excited about them as they are in this rebuild. So that's at least good. They didn't screw things up this offseason.
I will say I'm not overly confident, but I would not be surprised if they did not finish last in that division this year.
We all silly like the mayor.